Good morning, ladies and gents. This is Daniel Luke from the Office of Executor for the SCHOLZ Daniel Luke Estate. Just touching base, perhaps this could be classed as a round two, or a part two rather. Could be a round, bit of a duel going on here. The pen is mightier than the sword, they say, so there it is. For a public notice, because this is a public concern for all people, and perhaps the persons that are transitioning into realizing that they're not just a piece of paper or a ward of the state or a fiction, a legal personality. They're more than that. They feel that they're more than that. They're starting to transition into stepping in more to learning about who they are, because when you step into who you are within the system of your own soul, the soul system, you'll start to find these things concerning, and they are. For example, it's like Jim's lawn mowing services, coming and cut your lawn. You never spoke to a Jim's lawn mowing service in your life. You've always been doing your own lawns, and they do it without your knowledge. And then they come along and they send you a bill, or an invoice rather, for $1,264.97. Okay? They send you default notices, and then they come and, well, they pass you on to a debt collector. Okay? Now, this sort of behaviour is not on. And there's no difference between this behaviour and your local councils, okay? Because they are a trading company.
The local disaster management groups in each of those
established. We're in a new era.
Indigenous.
Okay, so as you can see here, let me have a look. Whoops. Okay, so as you can see here, you got a reference LLL F33 of 2019, Monday the 18th of November 2019 at 11:11. What a beautiful number that is. For those that you have like numbers, or that don't, but perhaps like to read and see some cool things, we'll perhaps look up the angel numbers. They're pretty cool. And rather, if they're not accurate or not true, at least the words that you're saying are rather positive and inspiring, because the law of attraction is really real. You create the very thought, what runs in your mind, as it operates at a frequency or a vibration. Okay. All right, so here we have a notice with cause without vexation. Okay, now what I'm really pointing out here is point one here. Okay, so the High Court of Australia, 11 of 2015, quote, "If you have an ABN and provide services for money, you are a trading company," end quote. That cannot be changed or overruled by any statute or act. Okay. The ATO classes local government and councils as ABN trading companies. In the Fair Work Act section 35, quote, "If you have an ABN and you employ people, you are a company," end quote. Companies require a written contract with full disclosure to do business with anybody. If a state government tries to establish a local government, an ABN company, that ABN company is automatically regarded as a private corporation, and it is therefore cannot be government. Okay? So as mentioned with the example there of Jim's Mowing, okay? They're a trading company, just like the local council is. Okay, but the local council, you believe that they're some sort of god, like perhaps a de jure government that are there to, really take care of things, and the money you give them and all the rest of it is, you know, for your benefit and your neighbour's benefit. But that is not the case. That is not true whatsoever. Okay, so let's just skip down. Oops, what's that? That looks pretty cool. Oh no, it's just there. Matrix. It's just... Okay, so it's a time sensitive. This is to Lisa Dowling, the CEO of the trading company Gladstone Regional Council. You are required to respond to this notice within 10 days from receipt of delivery. Failure to do so will be acceptance. You agree to the points outlined within this notice and accept to be precluded from asserting something contrary to what is implied by this notice. An estoppel. Lisa Dowling, subject to you refuting all 14 items, I am happy to consider any future written signed offers and quotes for services your company offers. Signed off on the 18th of November of 2019 as God was my witness, without prejudice, malice, vexation, argument, and or merriment. Okay, so that was back then. So we have a... Holy heck, this looks like a big blunt. So we have this trading company, namely Gladstone Regional Council. It could be Penrith Regional Council, Sturt Regional Council, Epping Regional Council. Whichever regional council, all of them are a trading company. Okay, anything that trades, it's private, it requires a contract, an agreement. And it is stated quite clearly in an agreement that the only way that business will be conducted between your office with the Gladstone Regional Council and the Office of Executor for the SCHOLZ Daniel Estate would be through an official notice to conduct business. Without such a thing, there will be no contracting. Okay, when we go over to maxims of law, we will find some maxims and ancient principles of law, which governs law. Is a way to administrate law, and that is a principle which will never be undone, and it is very prevalent in all matters, everywhere. These maxims are very important. However, I do believe when you would quote a maxim, which you can see a list here, Latin is to be put before it. They're meant to be put in Latin. I could be wrong. If I am, put the correction in the comments and let me know with some source fact that gives you that view. Now, the contract makes the law. Agreements give the law to the contract. The agreement of the parties overcomes or prevails against the law. Advice, unless fraudulent, does not create an obligation. No action arises out of immoral consideration. He who contracts knows, or ought to know, the quality of the person with whom he contracts, otherwise he is not excusable. So you can see some of these, or perhaps you could even have read some while I was speaking, how these guys put you in a contract. There's acquiescence, there's tacit, which is all it is a behaviour. You can just behave in a certain way, and their interpretation or their perception, which They're always going to be perceiving things as, you agree. Yep, you agree. Because at the end of the day, these guys here, they need to make their money. That's their position. They have shareholders. They need to look after their shareholders and please their shareholders. Because there is shareholders. Now, in relation to this trespass upon my estate, the office of Executor, the trespass upon my inherent rights, the trespasses could go on and on. Now I'm trying to ascertain whether or not the principal, Lisa Dowling of Gladstone Regional Council, has any knowledge of Agent Shane acting in her position, has any knowledge of that happening. So I have an inquiry as to if she has the knowledge. So I have written, "Greetings, Lisa. This instrument is not a letter, rather a lawful notice. We notice you in correlation to presumption we have in connection to an acting agent under your employ and to which you are liable for. We are attempting to ascertain whether you had prior knowledge of Shane Wales' actions to which are in breach of laws Gladstone Regional Council are under by the Executor's Office for the SCHOLZ Daniel Estate. These laws are in force and are current and have not been repealed by our office. Shane Wales is in breach of laws invoked by the Office of Executor to the Office of Gladstone Regional Council that have agreed upon laws within agreement Monday 18th of November 2019, agreed in December of 2019. As a result of the disregard of said laws by one of your agents, namely Shane Wales, enforcement may ensure upon Lisa Dowling as the principal of the Office of Gladstone Regional Council. Within said agreement, the laws were agreed upon by you, Lisa Dowling, for the trading company Gladstone Regional Council. As you are CEO to that trading company, this would bind those laws to Gladstone Regional Council presently and into the future. The agreement takes the place of law. The express understanding of parties supersedes such understanding as law would imply. Consent makes the law. The terms of a contract, lawful in its purpose, constitute the law as between the parties. He who is silent appears to consent." Those three there, guys, are maxims of law. I thought I'd put them in there because they're very relevant to this situation, and there's a lot of them which will be relevant in different situations. So I do urge you guys to go over to Google like this and type in maxims of law. There we go, right there. These maxims of the law on CIR now. I believe that is Mike Holt's website there. Lots of information, a plethora of information there. So here we go. As easy as that. We've got all sorts. We've got, accidents and injury. We've got benefits and privileges. Commerce, common sense. Oh, let's have a look at some of the common sense ones, shall we? When you doubt, do not act. It is a fault to meddle with what does not belong to or does not concern you. Many men know many things. No one knows everything. One is not present unless he understands. Consent and contracts, courts and pleas, court appearances, crimes and punishments, customs and usage. Custom is another law. So we've got all sorts of laws here by the sounds of it, because I've been speaking of a law. between an office to an office. The office of Gladstone Regional Council and the office of Executor for the Daniel Luke Scholz estate. Now, how is this so? Are you talking about the Crimes Act 1995 of the Commonwealth? Are you talking some imperial laws? Are you talking about customs? Well, as we learned earlier when we were up in the maxims, when one formed an agreement between two parties, it becomes the law between the parties. So what I've done in 2019, I've created some laws, some positive ones, some security layers, if you would, between me and this trading company that we have found by their very actions force business upon people, or upon me in this case. All right, but never fear, there is laws here. So now what I have to do, I have to enforce them. Okay, so and that's what part 2 is about. We're looking at following up on their trespass and their forced businesses. They trespassed upon my land here as I'm not at post. I mentioned this in part 1. There is no post box here. I'm a peacemaker. I'm of charity, and I'm not for hire. I do the works of my Heavenly Father. Now, I'm not being religious here. My Heavenly Father's my creator. Without him, I wouldn't be here to be able to speak to you today and to enjoy all the fruits that I have in my life. They're very tasty. And they are the laws that I am bound by. Those laws I do no wrong. But I have my own inner system. Being the image of my Heavenly Father, I've come to learn that you are another me. Or, this is how I see it anyway. So when I treat others, I treat them as I treat myself. I treat myself with respect, with love, with honour. So this is how I will treat you. So I don't really need even my Heavenly Father's guide there to what's right and what's wrong, because I live in the image of him. And I certainly won't step outside of the bounds from man-made legs of statutes. I mean, come on, that is absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, I've seen a lot of things written down on paper that these order followers are following. And just because something's written on paper and you have a shiny badge, doesn't make it right. Because what's going on here is that they think because it's written on paper that it's right. There's so much immoral actions going on out there because people are following their orders. And I will bring to your awareness the ones that do that. Be aware of the Nuremberg Code. Okay? And then on top of that, take yourself back to the Nuremberg trials. And many had a defense of, I was just following orders. And it was said that they had a moral obligation above and before anything. And this stands today. I mean, to not think of it, that it stands, would be just absolute ludicrous. Morality is above and beyond anything. If you're doing something and it's not right, well, I would apologise and stop immediately. So, in the investigation to the follow-up for the enforcement of such trespass from this for trading private company, namely Gladstone Regional Council, I was just on here before. I apologise, forgive me. So I presume you're not aware of the laws we have agreed to within the notice, with just cause without vexation, all rights reserved, request for further and better particulars on the 18th of November 2019. Now, I haven't finished this yet. There's not much more. Whoops, that's not the right one. Oh yes, it is. I haven't finished this yet, but there won't be much more to go to have it see its finesse, as it's only an inquiry. I mean, even enforcement really doesn't have to be too long-winded. I mean, I've received some correspondence here in respect to that. Now, I'm going to see... I'm going to bring up a document that was sent, which I scanned for evidence to place into the Office of Registry. Just a moment. Okay. So this is what was in an envelope stuck in between my door, as I'm not at post. There's a post box. Okay. Now, I've highlighted a few things, and I mean, I've been very simple with this. I mean, you can get really intricate with it, but let's just keep it kind of simple. What we're trying to be mindful about here is that things aren't right, okay? What is wrong? There's things that are wrong, okay? People could add lots of things to this, but all we really need to do is remember that we're all looking at this and recognizing that it's wrong. They're illegal, okay? You can have the bigger willy, I don't mind, okay? I'm just saying that it's wrong, and I've pointed out a few reasons here. So let's take a bit of a look, shall we? So we've got up to the top left in the black box. Fair Work Act, Section 35. If you have an ABN and you employ people, you are a company, and companies require a written contract with full disclosure to do business with anyone. Okay, that's their laws. Okay, all these laws out there are for the foreign administrators to keep them in their little box, okay, to regulate them. They're not for you, for me, and anyone else, unless, of course, you are a person. Therefore, you are a subsidiary of one of their offices, so therefore, you need to follow those policies pertaining to that corporation, being the Australia government. And also, we've got a Mr. Now that's a military title. Okay, you'll find in page 516 of the Australian Style Manual 6th edition, titles, and it goes into military. Now Mr., Mrs. is actually the lowest rank of the military, but the last time I checked, there has been a correction of that record. And also, I'm not at post. It's quite evident because they didn't put anything in a post box, right? Now we go into the yellow box there. We've got a Christian name. That's the baptismal name. It's distinct from the surname, but it's not even actually a Christian name because they're forgetting a hyphen. They haven't hyphenated the Daniel to join to the Luke. So in other words, I think they're under the presumption that Daniel is a first name and Luke is the surname. So that's invalid right then and there, because I ain't Daniel with the surname Luke whatsoever. Okay, now we've got show cause notice in a red box. An explanation there is to the left of that red box. We've got Dog Latin. It's a language of the illiterate, and there is no jurisdictions between two languages appearing on the one document. Well, there is jurisdiction, but if you're literate and can decipher and discern that that is what's taken place, you can say, hang on a second, I don't consent nor agree to having two languages on the one document, the two jurisdictions on the one document. I'm sorry, but that's invalid. Okay, and it's interesting that you never mentioned that to me. Therefore, it's not full disclosure. Null and void. Now, Waste Reduction and Recycling Act 2011, Section 246. So they're under the presumption that I'm a person. The person being an office, an office being a subsidiary of their company. Thus, the Waste Reduction and Recycling Act of 2011, Section 246, applies to this person. I'm not a person. Principle 13 of the Privacy Act, and through the Privacy Act of 1988, which I have had to use in reference for them to look at the language and go, right, yep, cool, that's a regulation. I have corrected records, namely birth, deaths and marriages, because when we think of correcting records, etc., we need to get to the foundation of things. So we need to look at the inception. We're not going to look at this over here or that over there, meaning perhaps there was an autograph in agreement with the Department of Human Services or Social Security in 1996 when I was 18 years old. No, we'll look beyond that. We'll look deeper. We'll not really too much deeper. We'll just get to the foundation of it, right? So that will be around the birth time, but it goes deeper than that, and perhaps I'll touch on that another time. So that, what I mentioned with the waste reduction, is in the green box. Now that legislation applies to the person. It does not apply to the Christian name. But if you're going to be the Christian name joined with the surname goes above and beyond and basically erases your Christian name, so you would just be known as, so Joe Bloggs Smith, okay? Now you go by Joe Bloggs because you're aware that you're a people and not a person, but as soon as Smith goes on the end of it, it erases the Joe Bloggs, so it doesn't really matter. They've screwed you, and you haven't been aware of it, so you haven't rebutted it or corrected it, thus tacit conduct. Yeah, you are that. So therefore you are under the employer, you are a subsidiary, so this here does apply to you. Okay, so there's lots of little tricks and bits and pieces. And, you know, it's not a great deal. I mean, you can get your head around it if you just spend a little bit of time, and it becomes very familiar. It becomes common. It doesn't take a rocket scientist, because, guys, I am not one of them. I'm the most simplest man you could find. You know? I don't know a great deal, but I'm certainly have a bit of room there because I don't know to know. Alright, now we've got here in a little green box there, we've got a Calliope Culled 4680. So we've got Culled. I'm not sure what that is. Culled. Now, if we were to interpretate that into what it is, which I believe it would be some form of symbolism, the sign language, the correct way to transfer that to proper English would be a Q full stop, L full stop, D full stop. However, that's not how it is written. So there is poison in the text, and I don't like poison, so I stay away from poison. I don't consent and put myself in a position or a place where there's poison everywhere. No contract. So Queensland, Culled is not Queensland. Okay, the last time I wrote a document, I believe I was in the state of happiness near Queensland, Queensland. Now to the right of Culled, you'll have the numbers 4680. Now that's a military postcode, and I'm not at post. The record would reflect that in the major 12 departments within the trading corporation, namely Australian government. It is on record there. There is no letterbox here. I'm not at post. I'm a peacemaker. It's quite evident if they paid attention. But they don't seem to want to pay attention. I wonder why that is. Are they that far gone? Or are they just power tripping with the fact that they've just done over so many of our brothers and sisters? Taken houses from them, added administration fees, and they just think that that's right. It comes down to ignorance, I'm sure of it. So here is an example. Okay, now that there is in the registry of the Office of Register for the Scholz Danulik estate as evidence on the record. That was handed back to them. Clearly stating that the time received, stamped, and saying no contract. There was also giving him a heads up for a couple of reasons that I did wish not to contract. Obviously, we've mentioned one of them. There is no notice to conduct business from this office to their office, for one, and that's a very major one. Second, there's misrepresentation, because as I've looked at the bastardization and a title in front of a Daniel, that is misrepresentation. Let's have a think about this while we're on the subject. Where's a Mr. and a Mrs.? Where is that? Where does it come from? Did it just drop out of the ether and just land next to a name or an appellation? A Mr. or a Mrs. Okay. For many, this will seem very, very minute and irrelevant. A Mr. So what? Well, that little addition to the name puts you in a position of the office as a subsidiary of their trading company. Thus, the Waste Reduction and Recycling Act would apply. Something so little, but something so huge. So, none of you guys are Mr. and Mrs. I believe marriage used to be performed through the traditional sacred making of love in the form of sex. And such things would be documented within a Bible. Same with births, etc. But now we're all meant to believe that, you know, we've got to need a license for it. So let's just think about, you know, you need a license to be married, a certificate to be married. You need permission to submit. That's an interesting word to get to the origin of too. Submit. To make a cubby house out of something that you allegedly own. These are the things I've been asking myself and presenting to myself for a very long time, saying that we cannot be free. This is not a free country if this is the case. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to really shake ourselves out of this illusion, which isn't always easy. But many of you are becoming aware that something's not right, and many more of you are becoming aware of a few things and how they are implementing it. I'm seeing a lot of people make comments on certain posts here and there on social media, and we're talking about different colours of pens, we're talking about other administrational contracting principles, etc. So it goes to show that a lot of people out there are actually starting to study and learn these things. So it is absolutely fantastic, and I've been waiting for this time for a very long time. Perhaps this is why I'm here now speaking out publicly, I guess, because I'm not normally doing things like this. I'm a very private man, and here I am. So we've got to really look at how we're dealing with these trading companies, okay? And I am going to be bringing solution. There is a few people out there in different groups that have their solutions. Some are okay, some are really good, and some are just a waste of time. And some others will see this as perhaps, one of those waste of times. However, it isn't, as I've experienced great success with a few things that I've done, and many other things have been successful, but not great successes. So my experience from my very implementation of the things that I speak of has seen success, and one would normally suggest to surround yourself around people that have had successes, because obviously they know what they are doing or executing to achieve such. So it's up to you. Do a bit of research. And you might realise that I've made an individual the head of a department resign late last year. I've also placed a commercial lien, which has been taken on by a debt collector successfully. That very individual being a actor that was acting, and I say was because he's no longer acting in the Queensland Police Service any longer. He certainly does not have that position. He will not entail to a position of any public service again. He's also lost his house, his wife, and everything that he probably took for granted, being in that acting position there, letting ego sort of take over his spirit and losing the plot, believing that he has authority and jurisdiction to randomly pull men over and require certain things. I did mention to that individual at the time that you can certainly have place orders, but you will be invoiced. As your principal, Ian Stewart of the Queensland Police Service, is certainly well aware of the fee schedule, and you should also, as he had a duty in that fiduciary position to notify all agents within that Queensland Police Service for-profit trading company. So in the future episodes, if I bring them out, which I probably will, because I think we all should be aware of how to execute and be familiar with the administration law, and hold these trading companies to task. Once upon a time I did sort of get a little bit upset when I looked out there and realised that there is no de jure government and they do what they want, there is no justice, etc., until I actually learned administration law and how to implement it and enforce it. And once that was achieved, I no longer looked at it the way that I once did, because where there's a trading company, there is an agreement, and you would have to make that agreement with them. Thus, you will create laws and layers of security between them and yourself. And once you enforce within their system, the word gets around from the higher up echelons to the mid-level layers of that trading company, and therefore, generally, they don't want to muck around with certain individuals. So stay safe out there, guys, and just remember to disobey, because to not would be an agreement. And also very important to also note on the offset of this presentation is silence is agreement. So never be silent. No more silence, please. It's time to stand. It's time to correct the record and have that standing in the capacity that you have corrected. You are no longer autographing or signing flat. We're going to be standing. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, this is Daniel Luke from the Office of Executor for the SCHOLZ Daniel Luke Estate. Much love.
Bye.